Rain hammered the glass roof of the Lagos supermarket like angry fists. Inside, a man who looked like no one, special plain shirt, worn sneakers, stood frozen before the cashier's screen, flashing one cruel word: declined. Behind him, murmurs rose like waves. Phones lifted, laughter sparked. The broke man's pretending to be rich, someone shouted. The manager Tunde strutted forward, smirking, his voice cutting through the air. Sir, if you can't pay, please stop wasting everyone's time. For a moment, the man Chidi Okafor just stared at the screen. The groceries weren't even for him. They were for a barefoot little girl and her mother waiting outside. He'd wanted to help. Now humiliation burned through him as every eye turned to watch his fall. Then through the silence, a small voice rose clear and brave. He bought this for us. Every head turned. The laughter died. And in that instant, Lagos itself seemed to stop breathing. Before we dive deeper into this powerful story, tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Drop your city and time in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more African stories that will touch your heart and stir your soul. The crowd inside the Lagos supermarket had turned restless, their voices blending into a low murmur that throbbed through the aisles. Some watched with curiosity, others with thinly veiled scorn. Chidi Okafor stood still, the plastic bag handles cutting into his palms, his heartbeat matching the beeps of the frozen card reader. His phone trembled in his hand as he reopened the banking app for the third time. Just a network issue, he muttered, his tone steady, but his chest tight. He wasn't afraid of being broke, he wasn't. What stung was the way people looked at him, as if his worth had been stripped bare because a small machine said declined. Next, please, Tunde barked. The young manager, tall, sharply dressed, with a gold wristwatch that gleamed under the fluorescent light, folded his arms and let out a mocking laugh. Some people love to play rich until the bill comes. The cashier looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting between Chidi and the manager. Sir, maybe the card, I said next, Tunde snapped. He wanted a spectacle and the audience was giving him one. The crowd shifted closer, their phones raised like hungry eyes, ready to capture shame. A woman in line whispered, serves him right. Dressing simple doesn't mean humble, it means he's broke. Chidi swallowed hard. Just a moment, he said quietly. I'm checking something. Tunde stepped closer, the smirk never leaving his lips. Oh, please, I've seen this act 1,000 times. Man walks in, tries to impress someone, card fails, and suddenly, it's a system error. He chuckled loudly, ensuring everyone heard. Brother, maybe next time buy what you can afford. Laughter rippled through the line like poison. Even the security guard near the door smirked. Chidi's throat tightened. He thought about leaving the groceries behind, walking away, but then he remembered the girl outside, the one with the dust-streaked legs and big brave eyes clutching her mother's hand. He'd promised to return with food. They hadn't eaten since yesterday. He lifted his gaze to Tunde. I said, give me a minute. His voice was calm, but carried a weight that made even the cashier flinch. Tunde raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Or what? You'll swipe your pride instead. Before another word could cut through, a child's voice sliced the tension clean in half. He bought this for us. Every head turned. A little girl, no older than 7, stood barefoot near the counter, her oversized t-shirt slipping off one shoulder, her hair tied messily with a blue ribbon. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. She stepped forward, pointing at the basket filled with food. He saw us on the street and wanted to help. He's not a thief. Silence dropped like a heavy curtain. Even the humming of the freezers seemed to stop. Chidi turned slowly toward her, stunned. He hadn't noticed her come in. The girl Amara stood tall in her smallness, facing the manager like a warrior. Tunde blinked, caught off guard. And who are you? He asked, voice softer now. Someone who knows the truth, she replied. The cashier lowered her eyes, her lips trembling. Sir, maybe we should. Tunde cut her off, but his tone wavered. This isn't your business, little girl. Go back to your, she's telling the truth, came another voice. The crowd parted slightly as a woman stepped into view, Ngozi Amara's mother. Her wrapper was faded, her hands rough from labor. She looked exhausted, yet her dignity glowed through the weariness. He didn't owe us anything. He just wanted to buy food for my daughter. If you think that's a crime, then maybe shame doesn't know where to live anymore. Murmurs spread. The crowd's mood shifted, guilt crawling in. A man at the back muttered, let the guy finish paying. Another whispered, that manager's gone too far. Chidi took a slow breath and reinserted his card. The machine beeped once, then again. Still declined. He felt a sting of humiliation, but this time he lifted his chin. Keep the basket aside, he told the cashier. I'll fix it. He turned to Ngozi and the little girl. Wait for me outside. They nodded and stepped out. Tunde exhaled sharply, regaining a hint of arrogance. There. Finally we can move on. But Chidi didn't leave. He glanced around the store, his gaze sweeping across the crowd that moments ago had mocked him. His tone was calm, deliberate. One day you'll realize that money isn't what makes a man respectable. It's how he treats people when no one's watching. He walked past the frozen stairs, past the silence heavy with shame, and through the automatic doors into the hot Lego sunlight. Outside, Ngozi sat on the sidewalk, clutching a worn plastic bag, her face half hidden behind her palm. Amara crouched beside her, tracing circles on the concrete. When Chidi appeared, the girl leapt up. "Did it work?" she asked. "Not yet," he said softly. "But it will." He crouched beside them. "Are you two from around here?" Ngozi hesitated, her guard still up. "We move around. Sometimes the shelter lets us stay, sometimes they don't." He nodded. "And your husband?" Her face changed. The question touched an old wound. "He died. A car hit him 2 years ago. I clean houses when I can. We manage." Chidi lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." The words were simple but sincere. "Let me try again." He went back inside the crowd, quieter now. Tunde straightened, pretending to be busy checking receipts. Chidi inserted the card once more. Beep. A green light blinked. Approved. The cashier exhaled in relief. Chidi looked at Tunde, his voice steady. "Embarrassment fades, but cruelty stays. Be careful what kind of man you become." Without another glance, he took the bag, thanked the cashier, and left. Outside, Amara grinned. Ngozi rose slowly. "You didn't have to come back," she said. "I keep my promises," Chidi replied. He handed her the groceries. "Take these. There's milk for Amara and bread. Maybe tonight won't be so hard." She tried to protest, but he lifted a hand. "It's fine. Just promise me you'll eat." They stood there for a moment, 3 strangers bound by a fleeting act of kindness. Around them the city buzzed, buses groaned, hawkers shouted, rain clouds gathered again. Chidi glanced at the dark sky. "Looks like another storm's coming," he said. Ngozi smiled faintly. It already passed. As he walked away, Amara called out, "Thank you, uncle." He turned, lifted a hand and smiled, the first real smile he'd managed in years. Behind the glass door, Tunde watched from inside, jaw tight, pride wounded. He didn't yet know that the man he'd humiliated wasn't just any customer. Chidi Okafor was the founder of Okafor Technologies, one of Lagos's most respected firms, a man who'd built his empire quietly and disappeared from the spotlight after tragedy. Now walking down the cracked pavement with the scent of rain in the air, Chidi felt something he hadn't felt in months: purpose. That little girl's courage had done more than silence a crowd. It had reignited something inside him. He paused at a street corner, watching Ngozi and Amara share a loaf of bread on the curb. The sight pierced him, not out of pity but recognition. He knew that kind of loneliness, the one that sits beside grief and never leaves. A horn blared. A taxi splashed muddy water onto his jeans, but he barely noticed. Somewhere inside him, a quiet decision took root. He would find them again. He would help, not for show, not out of guilt, but because in their faces, he'd seen the same broken light that once lived in his own eyes. The thunder rolled over Lagos, echoing down the streets like a warning and a promise. Rain broke loose over Lagos that evening, slamming against rooftops and mirrors of puddles along the road. Chidi drove his old sedan through the narrow streets, the wipers scraping back and forth like a heartbeat. His mind wouldn't quiet. The image of that little girl standing barefoot in front of the crowd replayed again and again, her voice steady, her courage too large for her small frame. "He bought this for us." Those words had burned through the noise louder than any storm. He parked near a row of street vendors closing up for the night. The scent of roasted plantain and diesel filled the air. Across the street, under a sagging canopy, Ngozi and Amara huddled together, eating from a plastic bowl of rice they must have bought with what was left of their change. Chidi sat for a while, just watching them through the rain-streaked windshield. He didn't want to scare them. He didn't even know what to say. Yet something inside pushed him forward, the same quiet force that had brought him back into that store earlier. When he stepped out of the car, the rain instantly soaked through his shirt. Amara spotted him first. Her face brightened. "Uncle," she called, waving the spoon in her hand. Ngozi looked up, startled, then wary. She stood clutching the bowl protectively. "You shouldn't be out here," Chidi said softly, stopping a few feet away. Ngozi's tone was firm but polite. "We're fine, sir." "You already helped enough. It's still raining," he replied. "At least let me drive you somewhere dry." She hesitated, studying him through the rain. Every line on her face spoke of someone who had been let down too many times to trust easily. "You a social worker?" He smiled faintly. "No, just someone with a car in an umbrella that's too big for one. Amara giggled the sound, small but warm. Mom, please, she whispered. Ngozi sighed, the kind of sigh that came from a heart too tired to argue. Fine, just for a while. They slid into the car, dripping water onto the seats. Chidi turned the heater on low and handed them a towel from the glove compartment. There's a small cafe nearby, he said. They won't mind if we sit a while. The cafe was nearly empty, a yellow light spilling warmth onto the wet street. They took a corner table. Chidi ordered 3 cups of tea and 2 meat pies. Amara's eyes widened as the food arrived, her fingers twitching with excitement. Ngozi thanked him in a whisper. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Only the rain tapping on the window filled the silence. Finally, Ngozi asked, Why did you help us? Chidi stirred his tea. Because I could. Because someone once helped me when I had nothing. You, she looked surprised. His clothes might have been simple, but his hands, their calmness, the way he carried himself, didn't belong to a poor man. You don't look like someone who's ever been down. He smiled without humor. Looks lie. He took a slow sip, eyes distant. When my wife died, I didn't talk to anyone for months. People called, sent messages, stopped by. I ignored them all. I didn't eat. I didn't work. Money didn't mean anything. Life didn't either. Ngozi's expression softened. I'm sorry. He nodded. You lost someone too. Her hands tightened around the warm cup. My husband Roger, 2 years ago. Hit by a drunk driver while buying milk. They said he died instantly. A sharp stillness settled between them. Different lives, same wound. Chidi exhaled. You're raising Amara alone, yes, she said. We had a small apartment once, but rent ate everything. I clean houses now when I can. Sometimes we sleep at the shelter, sometimes at bus terminals. But, she glanced at her daughter whose face was buried in the meat pie. She keeps me going. Chidi followed her gaze. She's brave. Ngozi smiled faintly. She gets that from her father. Lightning flashed through the cafe window, followed by a deep rumble. Amara jumped. Chidi reached out instinctively, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, little one, it's just the sky talking. She laughed softly. Then the sky is very loud. They stayed until the rain thinned into drizzle. Outside, Lagos gleamed with reflections, streetlights, dancing in puddles, cars hissing over wet roads. Chidi drove them toward the shelter near Yaba district. When they arrived, the gate was half closed. The guard at the entrance recognized Ngozi and frowned. Full tonight, he said. Ngozi's shoulders sagged. Please, just for the child. The guard hesitated, then waved them in. Only for one night. Tomorrow you'll have to find somewhere else. Chidi parked nearby and handed Ngozi a folded note. There's a number inside. If you ever need help anything, call me. She looked at the paper but didn't open it. I can't promise. You don't have to. He smiled. Just know it's there. She nodded. Thank you. As he drove away, he caught a glimpse of them in the rearview mirror. Ngozi guiding Amara inside the child, turning once to wave before the gate closed. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Chidi sat in his apartment, the lights off, the sound of rain still echoing in his head. He scrolled through his phone, staring at the bank message that had humiliated him earlier. Suspicious transaction, card temporarily blocked. He almost laughed. All that chaos for a computer glitch. But what lingered wasn't the embarrassment, it was the image of a small girl stepping between him and the world's cruelty. At dawn, Chidi drove to the office. The building still bore his name, Okafor Technologies, though he hadn't stepped inside for months. The receptionist froze when she saw him. Sir, we didn't expect I won't be long, he said. He entered his old office, the smell of dust and coffee greeting him like an old friend. Papers lay stacked neatly where his assistant had left them. He sat staring out at the gray skyline. For years, he'd built this empire on logic, precision, efficiency. Yet one random act of kindness had reminded him how little that all meant without humanity. He called his bank manager next. Morning, Samuel. About that card issue yesterday. Ah, Mr. Okafor, I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience. The system flagged it as suspicious, wrongly it seems. We'll fix it immediately. Chidi's voice was calm. Was there a manual report attached? The man hesitated. A manual report? Let me check. Papers shuffled through the receiver. Yes, sir. A complaint was filed through the fraud tip line right before your transaction. Someone claimed your card was stolen. Chidi froze. Do you know who filed it? I'm afraid it's anonymous, sir, but we can trace the device if you file a formal request. I'll do that. After hanging up, he stared at the desk for a long time. He already knew. Only one person had motive and timing: the manager at that supermarket, Tunde. The same man who'd mocked him publicly. The humiliation hadn't been enough for him. He'd wanted to twist the knife. By afternoon, Chidi was back on the road. He stopped by the shelter, but Ngozi and Amara were gone. The woman at the desk said they'd left early, maybe looking for day work. He thanked her and left uneasy. As he drove through the city, he spotted a small park near the bus terminal. Under a jacaranda tree, Amara sat on the concrete curb, drawing circles in the dust with a stick. Ngozi sat nearby, head bowed, looking lost. Chidi pulled over. "You two disappeared on me," he said gently as he approached. Ngozi looked up startled, then smiled faintly. The shelter was full again. "Come," he said, motioning toward the car. "There's a small house I use sometimes. Empty now, but safe. You can stay there until you find something better." Ngozi hesitated. "We can't just—" "It's not charity," Chidi interrupted. "It's a roof over your head, that's all." Amara tugged her mother's sleeve. "Please, Mom. Just for a few days." Ngozi's resolve melted. "All right, but only a few days." The house sat at the edge of Surulere, a modest two-bedroom with peeling paint and a small mango tree in the yard. When they entered, Ngozi froze. "It's beautiful," old Chidi corrected. "But honest." Amara ran through the rooms laughing. "Can I sleep here? You can sleep anywhere you like," Chidi said. As Ngozi unpacked their small bundle of clothes, she turned to him. "Why are you really doing this?" He paused at the doorway, rain dripping from his hair. "Because someone once gave me a place to breathe when I'd forgotten how. I'm just passing it on." That night, as he drove home, thunder rolled again over Lagos. But this time, it didn't sound like a storm. It sounded like the beginning of something new. In another corner of the city, Tunde sat in his office scrolling through his phone. He just read an online article: tech CEO seen arguing in supermarket as card declines. His smirk widened. Let's see how the mighty fall. He had no idea that the man he tried to humiliate was about to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. The morning sun broke through Lagos with a hard golden light painting the city in restless motion. Hawkers shouted by the roadside buses, coughed up black smoke, and the air smelled of fried plantain and ambition. In the small rented house at Surulere, Ngozi woke before dawn. For the first time in months, she hadn't slept on a floor. The roof didn't leak. The walls didn't smell of mildew or fear. She turned to the next room where Amara slept half buried in a blanket. The child's mouth was slightly open, her lashes fluttering with dreams. Ngozi smiled faintly, whispering a prayer of thanks, though she wasn't sure to whom. Outside, she found Chidi already in the yard sleeves, rolled up, trimming the overgrown mango branches. "You start your mornings early," she said, crossing her arms. He looked up, his expression warm but distant. "Old habit. I like watching the day build itself." Ngozi leaned against the doorframe. "I thought men like you sleep till noon. Men like me. You know, men who drive cars and wear watches that could feed a village." Chidi chuckled softly. "This one's fake." She raised an eyebrow, amused. "And I'm the Queen of England." They both laughed. For a moment it felt like something in the air had softened, the kind of laughter that comes when pain briefly forgets to breathe. Later that morning, Chidi took them to the market. Amara darted from stall to stall, marveling at the colors: bright peppers, cassava, ripe mangoes. Ngozi kept close, still uneasy with the idea of taking help from a stranger. Chidi walked a few steps behind, carrying the heavier bags despite her protests. When they returned to the house, Amara skipped inside, singing under her breath. Ngozi began unpacking vegetables. "You don't need to keep buying us things," she said quietly. "I know." He set the bags down. "But I want to. It's been a while since I cooked for anyone. You cook. Don't look so surprised." "I just don't picture rich men in aprons." He smiled faintly. "My wife used to say the same thing." Her tone softened. "You miss her." He looked toward the mango tree, the sunlight trembling through the leaves. "Every day, she loved children. We tried for years, but it never happened. When she died, the house felt like a museum of everything I'd lost." Ngozi nodded slowly. "Maybe God sent Amara to fill that silence for a while." He didn't answer. But in his eyes, something flickered, something between pain and gratitude. At noon, while Ngozi and Amara rested, Chidi drove to the supermarket where it all began. The moment he entered, conversations dropped. Tunde, the manager, froze mid-sentence. His usual smirk faltered when he saw Chidi walking toward him in a tailored suit, every inch the man of authority. "Good afternoon," Chidi said calmly. Tunde tried to recover his confidence. "Oh, it's you. The card guy. Did you come to Chitty raised a hand? To shop, not to argue. He placed a gold corporate card on the counter. Put this through your machine, please. The cashier obeyed. The screen blinked, approved instantly. Chitty turned to the watching staff. Yesterday I was treated like a fraud because my card failed once. Today it works. The money was never the issue, it's the humanity that was missing. He glanced at Tunde. What's your name? Tunde Ajayi, sir. Well, Mr. Ajayi, Chitty said, his tone calm but firm. You might want to learn that respect costs nothing, but it can make or destroy a man's future. Then he left a business card on the counter. Send your CV if you ever want to work for someone who values decency more than drama. He walked out, leaving Tunde speechless. The staff exchanged glances. Even the cashier couldn't hide her smile. That evening, Chitty returned to the house with a small box. Amara met him at the gate. Uncle Chitty, look, we made puff puff. She offered him one proudly, sugar dusting her fingers. He crouched, taking a bite. Delicious, he said, smiling. Your mom's a good teacher. Ngozi appeared at the doorway, wiping her hands on her wrapper. Don't flatter me, it's her recipe. Chitty lifted the box. Then I hope my gift doesn't ruin the mood. What's that? Amara asked. He opened it, a second-hand smartphone. For your mom. So I can reach you both and you can call me if you need anything. Ngozi blinked, clearly conflicted. This is too much. It's old, he said. You'd be doing me a favor keeping it from gathering dust. After a moment she nodded. Thank you. They shared dinner together, yam, porridge, plantain, and laughter that came easier than it should have. But deep down, Ngozi still felt a quiet unease. People who gave too much often wanted something in return. When Chitty left that night, she sat by the window long after Amara slept, scrolling through the phone. No strange messages, no tricks, just his number and a contact name, C. Okafor. Meanwhile, at the supermarket, Tunde's frustration boiled. He paced his office, scrolling through his phone. A colleague had texted him a news link. Reclusive CEO Chitty Okafor returns to Lagos. The photo showed the same man he'd mocked the day before. What? He slammed his hand on the desk. That beggar-looking fool. He read the article again, eyes narrowing. Known for his philanthropy and quiet lifestyle, Okafor disappeared from public life after the death of his wife 3 years ago. Tunde's face twisted. So that's who he is. He poured himself a drink, anger curling in his chest. He embarrassed me in front of everyone. Now they're all whispering. He thought for a moment, then opened his social media app. If the world loves a rich man, it loves a scandal even more, he told himself. He began typing a post. Funny how some CEOs hide behind fake kindness. Caught one buying food for strangers just to look humble. Ask yourself why. He attached a blurred photo from the security footage showing Chitty at the counter. Within minutes, comments began to roll in, some mocking, others defensive. Clout chaser CEO, or scammer man of the people, or man of drama. Tunde grinned. Let's see how long that halo lasts. 2 days later, Ngozi noticed men with cameras outside the small house. A reporter called out, "Ma'am, are you the woman?" The CEO is helping. Ngozi froze. What CEO? They showed her the post, now viral, number, kindness or clout. Dozens of blogs were speculating about her and Chitty's secret relationship. Some even accused her of being his mistress. Her face drained of color. No, this isn't true. When Chitty arrived, she confronted him at the gate, eyes blazing. What did you do? He looked confused. What are you talking about this? She shoved her phone at him. The headline screamed back at him. Billionaire's secret woman and her child. His expression hardened as he scrolled. I didn't leak this. Then who did? He exhaled slowly. Someone who wants to hurt me. I'll fix it. I can't stay here, she said, voice shaking. People are already talking. He reached out, but she stepped back. Ngozi, please, believe me. I would never. She shook her head, tears glistening. You've done enough. Amara appeared behind her, clutching her toy. Mom. Ngozi forced a smile. Pack your things, baby. We're leaving. Chitty stood frozen as they walked away, the gate clanging shut behind them. He turned his phone off, breathing hard. For the first time in months, anger, not grief, filled him. Whoever did this had crossed a line. That night, thunder rolled again over Lagos. Rain drummed against glass, washing the city clean, but leaving its people drenched in their own storms. Chitty sat in his car outside the supermarket, watching Tunde lock up for the night. The young man hummed, unaware of the figure watching from the shadows. Chitty's voice, low and even, cut through the rain. Enjoying your fame? Tunde spun around, startled. Sir, Mr. Okafor, I didn't. You posted that video. Tunde tried to smile. It was just a joke. Publicity. People love ruining lives. Chidi's tone stayed calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. You'll hear from my lawyer tomorrow. Tunde's grin faltered. You can't prove, oh, I already did. The video came from your store's internal server. I built that system myself years ago. Every upload leaves a trace. He turned rain sliding down his face. The difference between a man and a boy, Tunde, is understanding what power is for. He walked away, his silhouette swallowed by the rain. Inside his chest, something shifted, not vengeance, but resolve. This wasn't just about reputation anymore. It was about protecting people like Ngozi and Amara from the cruelty of men who'd never known hunger yet mocked those who had. By the time he got home, lightning split the sky open. He whispered to himself almost as a vow, if kindness can be weaponized, then I'll make sure mercy hits harder. At the shelter across town, Ngozi lay awake beside her sleeping daughter, staring at the cracked ceiling. Outside, thunder rolled again. She thought of Chidi's eyes, how calm they'd been even when humiliated. Something in her heart told her he was telling the truth. But another voice, smaller and older, whispered, men like him don't save people like you without wanting something in return. She closed her eyes. God, she murmured, if he's truly good, show me. Because I'm too tired to guess anymore. Outside, the rain began again, steady, unending, as if Lagos itself was trying to wash away its sins. Lagos woke under a gray sky that smelled of rain and diesel. The city pulsed as usual. Vendors shouting, engines, coughing, the distant wail of a police siren, cutting through the humid air. Yet for Chidi, the morning felt strangely hollow. He hadn't slept. All night he'd stared at the ceiling, replaying Ngozi's face as she walked away, her voice shaking with disbelief. You've done enough. He poured himself a cup of black coffee, but the bitterness matched his thoughts too well. On the kitchen counter lay the morning paper, its headline in bold, "Who is the woman behind CEO Chidi Okafor?" Beneath it, a photo of Ngozi carrying groceries, Amara clinging to her side. The caption read, sources say she and her daughter have been secretly housed by the reclusive billionaire. Chidi's jaw tightened. He didn't need to read the rest. The tone was obvious scandal, mockery, voyeurism. Lagos loved tearing down its idols, especially those who didn't play by the rules. He closed the paper, grabbed his keys, and headed out. At the same time, in a cramped shelter downtown, Ngozi tried to keep her hands steady as she braided another woman's hair. The place smelled of soap, sweat, and damp blankets. Her clients were mostly other displaced women, some too poor to pay, some paying with a small loaf of bread or a few coins. Every time the door opened, she flinched, half expecting more journalists. The whispers hadn't stopped. Someone at the market had pointed at her that morning. That's the woman from the video, the one with the rich man. Amara was in the corner, drawing on a piece of cardboard with a blunt pencil. Mom, she said suddenly, can I write Uncle Chidi a letter? Ngozi froze. Why, he looked sad when we left. Her throat tightened. I'm sure he's fine, baby, but he helped us. Ngozi sighed, tucking in the final braid. Finish your drawing first. At Okafor Technologies headquarters, Chidi stepped into the boardroom to find his legal team already waiting. Files and laptops cluttered the glass table. His assistant Ada handed him a folder. We've traced the leak, she said. It came from a private device logged into the supermarket's surveillance account, registered to a Tunde Ajayi. Chidi nodded grimly, then filed a defamation suit immediately. Ada hesitated. Sir, the blogs are still running with the story. Should we issue a public statement? He considered it. No, silence will speak louder. Let them guess. But the woman in Ngozi, she's being harassed. Wouldn't a statement protect her? That struck him. He lowered the folder. You're right. He paused, eyes darkening. Draft something short, no details, just truth. Minutes later, his social media page lit up with a single post. An act of kindness should never be turned into spectacle. The woman and child being discussed are under no obligation to anyone, least of all me. Respect their privacy. See. Oh. The comments exploded. Some praised him, others mocked him further. But one response cut through the noise, a simple heart emoji from an anonymous account named Hands of Grace. He didn't need to guess who it was. That evening, as the city dimmed under orange haze, Chidi parked near the shelter and waited. He saw Ngozi step out briefly to hang wet clothes on a line. Her eyes darted to the street, once meeting his car by chance. She froze. He rolled down the window slowly, lifting a hand in quiet greeting. For a moment, she didn't move. Then cautiously, she walked over. You shouldn't be here, she said, her voice tight. People will talk more. Let them, he said simply. I came to apologize. Her brows furrowed. For what? For the noise I dragged into your life. She shook her head. You didn't do that. But it started because of me. He exhaled. The world doesn't like quiet kindness. It has to turn everything into drama. Her lips curved into something between sadness and understanding. Maybe that's why kindness is so rare. They stood in silence as the evening wind stirred between them. Finally, she asked, "So, what happens now?" "I plan to clear your name, both of ours," he said. "And after that, I want to help you start something new. Something that belongs to you." Her eyes narrowed. "You mean money? I mean a chance." She hesitated, arms crossed. "Why me?" He looked at her then, really looked, and said quietly, "Because when everyone else laughed at me, you raised your head." Ngozie's breath caught. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, she whispered, "You're a strange man, Mr. Okafor." He smiled faintly. "So I've been told." The next morning, Tunde strutted into work wearing a smug grin, only to find a man in a gray suit waiting at his office door. "Mr. Ajayi," the man asked. "Yes," he handed Tunde an envelope. "You've been served. Defamation and invasion of privacy. Please contact your legal representative." Tunde's grin vanished. "What nonsense," the man walked away without another word. Inside the envelope was a letter signed by Okafor Legal Department. At the bottom in bold, any further harassment or public commentary will result in criminal charges. For the first time, Tunde's swagger cracked. His hands trembled slightly as he folded the paper. Later that day, the supermarket owner called him in. "What were you thinking?" the man barked. "You humiliated a customer who turned out to be a billionaire. Do you want this store destroyed?" I didn't know who he was," Tunde stammered. "Now you do. Pack your things." By sundown, his desk was empty. Meanwhile, Chidi's lawyer visited Ngozi at the shelter, carrying a formal letter. "Miss Ngozi, Mr. Okafor wishes to cover legal fees if you'd like to join the case against the man who defamed you." She stared at the paper, hesitant. "Do I have to?" "Not at all," the lawyer said kindly. "But you deserve justice too." Ngozi thought for a long moment. "I don't want revenge," she said finally. "I just want peace." The lawyer nodded. "Then we'll make sure you have it." That night she found Chidi waiting outside again. "You didn't tell me you were suing him," she said. "I wanted to fix things quietly." She frowned. "People like him, they don't learn through lawsuits." "You're right," he said. "They learn through humility." "How?" He smiled slightly. "You'll see." 3 days later, a news segment aired on Lagos TV. The headline, "Former Supermarket Manager Apologizes Publicly After Defamation Suit." The camera showed Tunde standing before microphones, eyes downcast. "I'm deeply sorry for my behavior," he said. "I acted without decency or facts." The public response was swift and brutal. But Chidi didn't gloat. He simply turned off the television. Ngozi, watching from the shelter, felt a strange peace. Not joy, exactly something quieter. Justice, maybe. The next morning, a parcel arrived at the shelter. Inside was a simple note written in neat handwriting. "The world tried to make us enemies of our own kindness. Let's build something louder than their hate. See." "Oh!" And beneath the note, a set of keys. Ngozi blinked, speechless. The shelter supervisor smiled. "Looks like someone believes in you." 2 days later, Chidi took her and Amara to see the space, a small storefront on a busy street, its faded sign still reading, "Mama Fola's Salon." Inside, the walls were chipped, but sunlight streamed through the front windows. Ngozi turned in disbelief. You rented this." "I bought it," Chidi said simply. "For you." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I can't take this." "You're not taking it," he said gently. "You're earning it. Call it a partnership." "A partnership." "Yes. You name it, you run it. I'll handle the permits and supplies. We'll start fresh." Tears welled in her eyes. "You really don't stop, do you?" He smiled. "Only when someone tells me to." She laughed through her tears. "Then you're impossible." "Maybe. But impossible things make good beginnings." That evening, Amara helped sweep the floor while Ngozi traced the empty sign above the shop door. After a moment, she picked up a piece of chalk and wrote slowly, "Hands of Grace." Chidi stood beside her, watching. "That's beautiful. It's what I want this place to be," she said softly. "A place where broken hands learn to create again." He nodded. "Then let's make it happen." As dusk fell, the first lights flickered on along the street. Inside the small salon, laughter echoed, gentle, hesitant, real. Outside, Lagos carried on, unaware that within one quiet shop, the ruins of humiliation were turning into a home for hope. Chidi leaned against the doorway watching Ngozi and Amara dance around with a broom as music drifted from a nearby stall. The storm had passed, but the sound of rain still lived somewhere deep inside them, not as fear, but as reminder. After every storm, the ground is softer for seeds to grow. And for the first time in years, Chidi whispered a prayer, not for success, not for forgiveness, but for courage to keep choosing kindness, even when the world laughed. Morning in Lagos carried a softness Chidi hadn't felt in years. It was a Sunday quiet except for distant church bells and the rustle of palm leaves behind the little salon. The air smelled of soap and hope, two things that had become rare in his life. From inside Hands of Grace, laughter spilled out warm and genuine. Ngozi was teaching Amara how to twist synthetic braids on a mannequin head. Not too tight, she said, her voice firm but gentle. If it hurts your fingers, it'll hurt the client's scalp. Amara giggled. Then this mannequin must be crying already. Chidi stood at the doorway holding a tray of meat pies and 2 steaming cups of tea. Break time for the teachers, he said. Ngozi looked up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. You cook and deliver. Every successful salon needs catering service, he teased, setting the tray down. She smiled, though her eyes flickered with something deeper, gratitude maybe. You've done too much already, Chidi. He shook his head. I haven't done anything you didn't earn. Still, her tone softened. Most people would have forgotten us the moment the cameras turned away. He sat on a stool, glancing at the bright new paint on the walls. Maybe I didn't help you. Maybe you helped me, she blinked, surprised. How he leaned back, thoughtful. Before that day in the supermarket, I was existing, not living. My world had shrunk to a house full of ghosts and a company that ran itself. Then you and Amara reminded me that broken things can still teach others how to heal. Ngozi's lips parted slightly, but she didn't reply. Instead, she busied herself cutting thread, though her hands trembled just a little. By afternoon, the first real customers came. 3 women from the nearby market, gossiping and laughing, loudly entered the salon. We heard about the famous widow and her billionaire friend, one joked, nudging Ngozi playfully. Ngozi blushed. He's just a friend, she said quickly. The woman laughed. Then may the Lord send more friends like him. Chidi grinned, pretending to check his phone. The salon filled with the smell of coconut oil and conversation. Amara swept hair from the floor, proud of her job. Every small detail, the chatter, the clinking of combs, the light dancing on the new mirrors, breathed life back into the place. Later, when the customers left, Ngozi closed the cash drawer and exhaled. First day, and we made enough to buy dinner. Chidi smiled. That's not just dinner, that's the first seed. She looked at him curiously. Seed, every act of courage plants one. What grows depends on how much faith you water it with. Ngozi shook her head with a small laugh. You talk like a pastor. Don't tell my board of directors, he replied. But while light bloomed in one corner of Lagos, darkness brewed in another. In a cheap bar, Tunde nursed a bottle of beer, his face hard with resentment. The lawsuit had been dropped after his public apology, but his career was finished. No supermarket would hire him. Online people called him the fool who mocked a billionaire. He scrolled through his cracked phone, watching another viral post about Hands of Grace photos of Ngozi smiling beside her new shop, Chidi standing in the background. So now she's a saint and he's her savior, he muttered bitterly. A man at the next table chuckled. If you hate him that much, tell your story to the bloggers again. Tunde sneered. They're all scared now. He's too powerful. The man leaned closer. Then go where power doesn't matter. Rumors don't die, they mutate. Feed them right and they'll burn him again. Tunde's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Say the kindness was fake. Say he's using her for something. Lagos loves a scandal, brother. Tunde smirked. Maybe it's time the hero gets dirty. The next week, Chidi received an email from an anonymous source. The subject line read, Your woman's passed. Against his better judgment, he opened it. Inside was a link to a gossip blog article titled Widow or Schemer, the real story behind Chidi Okafor's charity case. It accused Ngozi of lying about her husband's death, hinting she'd once been involved with a married man who left her with nothing but a child. The post had thousands of shares, all dripping with speculation. Chidi's stomach turned. He closed his laptop, fury coiling in his chest. He knew it was fake, the tone, the timing, everything screamed Tunde. But damage spread faster than truth. Within hours, journalists returned to Hands of Grace, flashing cameras through the glass. Ngozi stood, frozen scissors trembling in her hand. Miss Ngozi, one reporter shouted. Did you seduce Mr. Okafor for money? Her face went pale. Please leave my shop. Is your daughter really his child? Another asked. That one hit like a slap. Ngozi's breath caught. The room spun. From the doorway, Chidi's voice thundered, "Enough." The crowd turned. His tone was quiet, but his presence filled the space. "This woman owes you no explanation. Take your gossip and go." The reporters hesitated. He stepped closer. "If you don't, I'll make sure your outlets never print again." That was enough. They retreated, mumbling apologies. When the door closed, Ngozi slumped into a chair, tears threatening. "Why won't they stop?" she whispered. Chidi knelt beside her. "Because the world fears a story that doesn't fit its expectations. A rich man can't help a poor woman without sin in between. That's what they believe." She looked at him through blurred eyes. "Then maybe we should stop giving them reasons to talk." "What do you mean? Maybe you shouldn't come here anymore." "At least not until they forget." He stared at her, hurt flickering behind his calm. "If that's what you want." "It's not what I want," she said quickly. "It's what's safe." He nodded slowly. "Safety's overrated." But he stood anyway. "Take care of yourself, Ngozi, and of Amara." When he left, the shop felt colder, quieter. Ngozi sat staring at the door long after it closed. Weeks passed. Hands of Grace survived, but something in its air had changed. Ngozi worked longer hours trying to drown her thoughts in the rhythm of scissors and combs. At night, she read Amara bedtime stories and pretended everything was fine. Then one evening, while closing the shop, she noticed a letter slipped under the door. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the ink was dark and deliberate. "Sometimes good people must walk through storms so others can see where the shelter is. C.O." Ngozi pressed the paper to her chest. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to smile. The next day, she found courage she didn't know she had. She recorded a short video standing in front of her salon sign. "My name is Ngozi," she said into the camera. "People have called me many things, poor widow opportunist, but I am none of those labels. I'm a mother, a survivor, and the owner of Hands of Grace. If kindness is a crime, then I'll keep breaking the law." She posted it online and went back to work, expecting nothing. But within hours, the video exploded. Thousands shared it, praising her dignity and strength. Comments flooded in. "You're an inspiration. Your courage restores faith in humanity." By sunset, even news outlets picked it up. "Woman at center of Lagos scandal speaks Grace in her own words." At home, Chidi watched the clip on his phone, a quiet smile spreading across his face. "That's my girl," he whispered to himself. The following week, Hands of Grace was busier than ever. Women lined up for appointments, not out of pity but respect. Ngozi had turned public shame into silent victory. One afternoon, as she prepared tea, a knock sounded at the door. When she opened it, Chidi stood there holding a small potted plant. "Peace offering," she asked, smiling. "New beginnings," he corrected, handing it to her. "It's hibiscus, tough plant, grows even after drought." Amara ran in, squealing Uncle Chidi, and wrapped her arms around his leg. Ngozi watched them, heart swelling. "You're supposed to stay away," she teased softly. "I tried," he admitted. "Didn't work." She laughed, the kind of laugh that heals. "Then maybe the world should mind its own business." He nodded. "Let them talk. We'll keep building." As evening fell, they sat outside the salon, sipping tea, watching Lagos turn gold under the setting sun. "Do you ever think about starting over?" Ngozi asked quietly. "I already have," Chidi replied, his gaze resting on her and Amara. "Right here." And for the first time since his wife's death, he felt the world tilt toward peace instead of pain. The city buzzed on chaos and beauty intertwined, but for them, beneath the flickering sign of Hands of Grace, it felt like Grace had finally come home. The rainy season returned to Lagos with the kind of drama only the city could stage: lightning slicing through black clouds, thunder that shook rooftops, and streets turning to rivers within minutes. Inside Hands of Grace, the storm sounded like a drumbeat, steady and wild. Ngozi stood by the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. For once, the noise didn't make her flinch. Rain used to remind her of everything she'd lost. Now it whispered of everything she'd survived. Amara sat cross-legged on the salon floor, coloring with a set of pencils a client had gifted her. "Mom, can we visit Uncle Chidi's office one day?" she asked, her small voice cutting through the rhythm of rain. Ngozi turned, half smiling. "Why do you want to go there?" "Because he helps people with computers," Amara said, serious as a judge. "And I want to help people too." Ngozi chuckled softly, kneeling beside her daughter. "You already do, my love. You helped a stranger in a supermarket once, remember?" The girl grinned, flashing a gap-toothed smile. "Then I want to do it again." Before Ngozi could answer, the bell over the door chimed. A man in a soaked jacket stepped in, shaking off water. "Good afternoon, Ma," he said, his accent crisp, educated. "I'm looking for Madame Ngozi Okafor." She blinked. Ngozi Nwokedi, she corrected, frowning. Who are you? He pulled out an ID card. Inspector Musa Lagos CID. May we talk privately? Her stomach clenched. She gestured toward the small break room. Once inside, the inspector lowered his voice. I apologize for the intrusion. There's an ongoing investigation involving Mr. Chidi Okafor. We believe you might know him. Her heart skipped. What kind of investigation? Financial sabotage, the man said carefully. Someone's been leaking his company's data to competitors. We traced some of the communications to an IP address that connects to this location. Ngozi's eyes widened. Here, that's impossible. The inspector handed her a printed log. We believe someone used your Wi-Fi network. Do you allow customers access? Sometimes, yes, she admitted. But we changed the password months ago. He nodded. It could be coincidence, but Mr. Okafor is under scrutiny, and so are his associates. Her throat tightened. Are you accusing me? Not at all, the inspector said gently. We just need to rule out your connection. I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention this to him yet. He left her standing there, pulse hammering. Rain crashed harder outside. For the first time in months, fear crept back into her bones. That evening, Chidi arrived at the shop drenched and smiling. Your sign is glowing through the rain, he said, like a lighthouse. But Ngozi's smile didn't reach her eyes. We need to talk. He sensed it immediately. What's wrong? Police came today, she said quietly. They said someone's using our Wi-Fi to hack your company. They think it's connected to me. His expression didn't change, but his hand tightened on the doorknob. Musa. She nodded. He sighed, shaking his head. Of course they'd trace it here. It's too easy. Too easy, she asked. Yes, someone's setting you up. Who would do that? He hesitated, his eyes dark. Someone who still blames me for their downfall. Tunde, she whispered. He nodded once. He knows I've been rebuilding the company's community program funding scholarships, digital centers. He also knows I don't play politics. Some of the competitors I refuse to bribe are using him. Ngozi crossed her arms. So what do we do? He looked at her, and despite the storm outside, his voice was calm. We keep working. We don't let fear write our story. You talk like it's easy. He smiled faintly. It's not. But neither was surviving that supermarket, remember? Ngozi exhaled, tension easing a little. You really believe it'll blow over? I don't believe, he said softly. I know. Still, when he left that night, his hands shook slightly on the steering wheel. At the CID office, Inspector Musa studied a set of surveillance photos under fluorescent light. One showed a man entering Hands of Grace late at night. The resolution was poor, but the outline was familiar. Short hair, slouched posture, a cheap leather jacket. Musa frowned. Tunde Ajayi, he murmured. Again. He made a note to visit Chidi the next morning. But morning never arrived quietly in Lagos. At 7 a.m., Chidi's phone rang. Ada, his assistant, sounded breathless. Sir, the media's outside the headquarters. Someone leaked documents suggesting our community funds were laundered through Hands of Grace. Chidi froze. That's impossible. They have bank screenshots, sir, transfers between your foundation and the salon account. He closed his eyes, the pieces clicking together. Fake documents. Digital forgeries. Tunde's style. Ada hesitated. They're calling it Operation Halo, saying you used a poor woman to clean dirty money. Chidi's blood ran cold. I'll handle it. He hung up and immediately drove to the salon. Ngozi was already outside, surrounded by reporters. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust toward her. Miss Ngozi, are you part of Okafor's fraud network? Is Hands of Grace just a front? Was your daughter involved in any of the charity programs? Ngozi's face crumpled in disbelief. This is madness. Chidi parked and stormed through the crowd. Enough, he barked. If any of you repeat these lies, your stations will face charges for defamation. But the damage was done. The whispers had begun again. Inside, Ngozi rounded on him, trembling. Tell me the truth, Chidi. Did you use my name for something? His voice cracked. No, I swear it. She stared into his eyes, searching for a lie. She found none, but pain clouded her anyway. Then why do they have papers? Because evil is faster with printers, he said bitterly. Her shoulders slumped. I can't live like this. Every time I stand up, something pushes me down. He stepped closer. Then let me carry some of it. No, she said sharply. You've carried too much already. Please, he whispered. Trust me once more. Her lips trembled, torn between faith and fear. If I do and you're wrong, I lose everything. Then I'll lose it with you. That silence between them said more than any promise could. By afternoon, the rain stopped. The air hung heavy, humid with tension. Chidi drove straight to the CID office. "Musa," he said without greeting, "I know who's behind this." The inspector nodded. "We think so too. Ajayi's been transferring small payments to fake accounts linked to your foundation for months. He used them to frame your charity projects." Chidi exhaled. "Can you prove it? We're close, but I need bait." Chidi raised an eyebrow. "What kind?" "Something he can't resist, public humiliation in reverse." A slow smile spread across Chidi's face. "I think I know just the thing." 3 days later, the Lagos Business Forum buzzed with chatter. Every major entrepreneur, politician, and journalist filled the hall. Rumor had it the reclusive Chidi Okafor was attending in person to address the scandal. In the front row, Tunde sat with fake confidence, a new phone in his hand, ready to stream whatever happened. He'd been paid by a gossip outlet to record the downfall live. When Chidi took the stage, the crowd hushed. He stood tall, wearing a simple black suit, eyes calm. "There's been much talk about money and motives," he began, "about charity and corruption, but sometimes truth hides in plain sight." He clicked a button on the podium. A video projection appeared behind him, security footage from a cyber cafe. The image was grainy but clear enough, Tunde inserting a flash drive, transferring files labeled Okafor Foundation Records. Gasps rippled through the room. Chidi's voice stayed steady. "This footage was submitted to the CID yesterday. It confirms the leaks originated not from our systems, but from a fired employee seeking revenge." He turned his gaze toward the crowd. "To those who profit from lies, I hope humiliation teaches what empathy couldn't." Tunde bolted for the exit, but police officers were already waiting. Cameras followed him out the same way they'd once followed Ngozi. Chidi paused, then smiled faintly. "Now perhaps we can return to what matters, building something honest." The audience erupted in applause. Some even stood. That night, Chidi drove back to Hands of Grace. Ngozi was sweeping the floor when he entered. She turned, eyes searching. "Is it over?" He nodded. "Completely. They arrested him this evening." She leaned against the counter, relief washing over her like clean rain. "Thank God." Chidi stepped closer. "I told you truth doesn't need to shout. It just waits for noise to tire itself out." She smiled through tired eyes. "You never stop talking in riddles." "It's the only language life listens to," he teased. She laughed, a full free laugh this time. "So what now?" He looked around the salon. "Now we rebuild again. This time stronger." She tilted her head. And after that he hesitated, his voice softer. "Maybe we stop pretending this is just partnership." Her heart stumbled. "Chidi, don't answer yet," he said quickly. "Just think about it." The thunder rolled in the distance, but neither of them moved. Amara ran in from the back room, waving her coloring sheet. "Look, Uncle, it's our shop with sunshine." Chidi crouched, smiling. "You forgot the rain," Amara grinned. "No, I didn't. I turned it into light." Ngozi watched them, tears forming. Maybe that was the answer. After all the storms, perhaps the only thing worth keeping was what turned the rain into light. Outside Lagos glimmered under the night sky, loud, chaotic, alive, but inside Hands of Grace, peace finally found a home. Dawn broke over Lagos in shades of amber and soft gray. The storm that had ripped through the city the night before had left puddles glittering like coins along the streets. Inside Hands of Grace, the world was still. Ngozi stood in front of the mirror, combing Amara's hair before school. The little girl yawned, half asleep, but her reflection smiled back at her mother, a quiet, peaceful smile that Ngozi hadn't seen in a long time. "Mom," Amara mumbled, "are we happy now?" Ngozi paused, her hand resting on the small girl's shoulder. "We're getting there, baby." The door creaked open, and Chidi's voice drifted in smooth as morning light. "I brought breakfast before you say no." Ngozi turned, pretending to frown. "You don't rest, do you? Rest is for people who finish their purpose," he said, setting a paper bag on the counter. "And you, my dear, are only halfway through yours," Amara giggled. "He talks like church sometimes." Chidi laughed, kneeling to her height. "Maybe because kindness and faith speak the same language." Ngozi shook her head, but there was affection behind her smile. "One day that tongue of yours will get you in trouble, Chidi Okafor. Then I'll rely on Hands of Grace for redemption." Later that morning, after dropping Amara off at school, Ngozi returned to the shop and found a small envelope slid under the door. It had no name, only a faint scent of cologne. She unfolded it and read, "I know who you really are. Meet me behind the market tonight at 8 if you don't want your past exposed." Her blood ran cold. The paper trembled in her hand. Who I really am, she thought. What passed her mind rushed through possibilities. Someone might have found her late husband's death certificate, Or maybe her old landlord, the one she'd owed rent to, had resurfaced. She folded the note quickly as Chidi entered. "Everything okay?" he asked, studying her face. "Fine," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just sorting receipts." He didn't believe her, but he respected silence when it asked to be left alone. As evening fell, Lagos pulsed with its usual chaos horns, shouting vendors, the distant cry of church choirs blending with Afrobeats from open bars. Ngozi walked briskly toward the back of the market, her heart pounding. The alley smelled of smoke and rotting fruit. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Her breath caught. "Tunde," she whispered. He looked thinner, his once proud face now lined with bitterness. "Long time, Ngozi. I thought you were in jail." He smirked. "Money moves things in Nigeria, you know that." Her fists clenched. "What do you want?" "Simple," he said, leaning closer. "1,000,000 naira, or that fancy salon of yours burns down by morning." Her eyes widened. "You're insane," he shrugged. "Maybe, but I know enough to ruin you. Those documents I faked, I still have backups. I could make it look like you were the brains behind the fraud." Ngozi felt sick. "Why me? Haven't you done enough?" "Because destroying him wasn't enough," Tunde hissed. "Chidi's reputation survived. People forgave him. But if you fall, he falls too." Her voice trembled. "You're a monster." "Maybe," he said. "But I'm a hungry monster. You have until tomorrow night." He slipped into the darkness, leaving her shaking. Back at the salon, Ngozi locked the door and collapsed into a chair. Her hands shook so hard she almost dropped her phone. She wanted to call Chidi to tell him everything, but fear held her tongue. The last time scandal touched them, his empire nearly fell apart. She wouldn't risk that again. So instead she called Inspector Musa. "Ma'am," he said, his tone steady, "we've been tracking Ajayi since his release. You did the right thing calling me. Can you stop him? We'll try. But don't confront him again. He's desperate." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Just don't let him hurt my daughter. You have my word." The next morning, Chidi arrived earlier than usual. He noticed Ngozi's eyes, red, restless, sleepless. "You're hiding something," he said gently. She avoided his gaze. "It's nothing. Just tired." "Lies look heavier than truth," he said softly. That nearly broke her. Tears welled up, spilling before she could stop them. "He's back, Chidi. Tunde, he threatened to burn the shop. He wants money." His expression darkened. "He came to you," she nodded, trembling. "I called Musa." Chidi pulled out his phone instantly. "He'll get nothing. Not again. Please don't go after him," she pleaded. "I can't stand another war." He looked at her, really looked, and said quietly, "War sometimes finds us even when we hide." That night he waited. Tunde showed up behind the market again, just as Ngozi had described. Same jacket, same crooked smirk. But instead of Ngozi, two men in plain clothes stepped from the shadows. "Ajayi Tunde," one said. "You're under arrest for blackmail, extortion, and arson threats." Tunde's smile faltered. What he turned and froze. Behind him, Chidi stepped forward, his face unreadable. "You made one mistake too many, Tunde." Rage twisted Tunde's features. "You think you're untouchable because you're rich." Chidi's voice was calm, deadly quiet. "No, I'm untouchable because I stopped being afraid of people like you." Tunde lunged forward, but the officers restrained him easily. "You'll regret this," he spat. "She'll regret this too." Chidi didn't flinch. "She's done regretting anything." As they dragged Tunde away, rain began again, soft, this time almost cleansing. The next morning, news spread fast. Former manager arrested for attempted blackmail against Okafor and local businesswoman. The scandal that once hunted Ngozi now painted her as survivor, not victim. By noon, Hands of Grace was flooded, not with police or reporters, but with customers offering support. One woman said, "I saw your story on TV. You're stronger than any man I know." Ngozi smiled weakly. "I'm just tired of being scared." "Then don't," became Chidi's voice behind her. He walked in carrying a bouquet of red hibiscus, the same kind he'd once brought to mark their new beginning. "They grow best after the storm," he said, handing it to her. Her fingers brushed his as she took it. "So what now?" he smiled. "Now we start living instead of surviving." She laughed softly. "And what does living mean to you, Mr. Okafor?" He hesitated, his eyes gentle but sure. "It means not walking alone anymore." Her breath caught. "Are you saying I'm saying," he interrupted quietly, "that maybe life gave us both too many chances to say no, so this time I'm saying yes?" Silence filled the room thick, with all the unsaid words that had lived between them since the supermarket. Ngozi stared at him, tears forming, but this time they were light, not pain. "You're impossible," she whispered. Only when I'm right, he said, smiling. From the corner, Amara clapped her hands, beaming. So, are we a family now? Both adults laughed, startled by her boldness. Chidi crouched to her level. What do you think? Princess Amara grinned. I think you already are. Ngozi covered her face, laughing through tears. You and your mouth, child. Chidi reached out gently, pulling Ngozi's hand away. She just speaks the truth. You're too humble to admit. Their eyes met, and for once, the world around them disappeared. That evening, as the sky blushed gold and the last rays of sunlight touched the city, Hands of Grace held its first community event, a free workshop, teaching young women how to braid, budget, and believe again. Ngozi spoke to the crowd, her voice steady. Every storm in this city has a name: hunger, loss, humiliation. But storms pass, and what's left is what we build together. When she stepped down, Chidi joined her on stage, slipping his hand into hers without words. The crowd clapped, whistled, cheered. Somewhere near the front, Amara danced with her new friends, her laughter rising above the music. Chidi leaned close. You know, he whispered, if someone had told me that a broken card and a loaf of bread would lead me here, I'd have laughed. Ngozi smiled. Then it's a good thing you didn't have the choice. He laughed quietly, resting his forehead against hers. No more storms, Ngozi. Not if I can help it. She looked up at him, eyes glimmering. Storms don't scare me anymore, she said. Not when I know where to find shelter. Outside, thunder rolled far away, soft this time, almost like applause. And in the warm glow of Hands of Grace, love finally took its rightful place, not loud, not rushed, but steady and earned. The dry season returned to Lagos with a golden fury, and for once, the sun seemed to shine directly upon Hands of Grace. The small salon had become a beacon, its pink walls freshly painted, its mirrors lined with little stickers that said, "You are enough." Ngozi watched customers come and go, her heart swelling with a pride she didn't dare name. What had once been a dream built from tears now hummed with laughter, with life. Outside, Amara played in the dusty yard, braiding her doll's hair and pretending to scold invisible customers. "You're next, ma'am. Please sit properly," she said, her imitation of her mother so perfect that the nearby women burst out laughing. Chidi stood across the street beside his car, watching them quietly. His phone buzzed, another call from the corporate board, but for once he let it ring out. The empire could wait. This was the world that mattered now. When Ngozi spotted him, she waved. "Mr. CEO, observing your new business partner again." He crossed the road, smiling. "Just making sure my investment keeps growing." "Your investment," she teased. "You mean my salon?" "Semantics," he said, eyes glinting. "Arrogance," she shot back. They both laughed, and for a brief moment the city's chaos melted away. By late afternoon, Lagos shimmered under heat. Ngozi poured Chidi a glass of chilled Zobo and sat beside him in the small courtyard. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "What's on your mind?" He hesitated, running a hand through his neatly cropped hair. "Expansion," she frowned. "Of what, your tech company?" "No," he said softly. "Of this, of what we started." She blinked. "You mean I want to open more salons?" he said. "Not just for profit. For women like you, widows, single mothers, anyone trying to start over. We'll train them, give them a way to live with dignity." Ngozi's mouth fell open. "That's enormous." "I can handle enormous," he said with a grin. "But I need your help. You will be the face of it." She nearly dropped her glass. "Me? Who else? You live the story. People don't need another billionaire speech. They need a survivor's voice." Ngozi looked away, overwhelmed. "I don't know if I can stand in front of cameras again." He reached across the table, gently touching her hand. "You already did once. You spoke truth when the world tried to shame you. This time, it'll listen." She met his gaze. His eyes held that steady warmth she'd come to depend on, the kind that promised safety without asking for surrender. "Let me think," she said softly. He nodded. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." That night, while Amara slept, Ngozi stood at the window staring at the moonlit street. The city was quieter than usual, though she knew Lagos never truly slept. She thought of her late husband Roger, his laughter, his soft singing voice. He'd died trying to buy milk for their daughter. For years she'd blamed herself. Now she whispered into the night, "Maybe I finally understand Roger. Kindness doesn't die with the body." She turned toward the bed where Amara slept peacefully, and her eyes softened. Perhaps, just perhaps, she was being given permission to live again. The next morning brought chaos, not at the salon but at Okafor Technologies. Chidi arrived to find tension hanging in the air like humidity. His assistant Ada met him at the door, her expression grim. Sir, the board's called an emergency meeting. Some shareholders are uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. About what? About you spending company resources on nonprofit ventures, she said carefully. They're calling Hands of Grace Foundation a distraction. He exhaled slowly. A distraction. Sir, they're worried about image, not morality. You've rebuilt your reputation, but they think you're well losing focus. Chidi walked to the window. The skyline shimmered in the distance, glass towers stabbing into the sky like promises. Tell them I'll be there, he said. When he entered the boardroom, all conversation stopped. The air buzzed with restrained tension. Mr. Ajayi, the oldest board member, leaned forward. Chidi, we appreciate your philanthropic ambitions, but you're bleeding funds into an untested social project. Chidi's jaw tightened. An untested project that's changing lives. Lives don't pay dividends, another man muttered. He fixed them with a cold gaze. Dividends don't bury the dead or feed the hungry either. A silence followed. Then Ajayi sighed. We're not monsters, Chidi. But this is business. Chidi stood. No, gentlemen, this is legacy. And I'd rather be remembered for rebuilding people than for buying another skyscraper. He gathered his files. If anyone wants to leave the company because of that, the door is open. No one moved. He walked out, heart pounding, not from fear, but conviction. That evening, he stopped by Hands of Grace. Ngozi noticed the exhaustion behind his smile. Rough day, just boardroom noise, he said, waving it off. They think compassion isn't profitable. She handed him a cup of tea. Then they've never seen a woman with a second chance. He smiled faintly. You're proof that grace pays better than greed. They sat in companionable silence for a while, until Ngozi broke it softly. I'll do it. He looked up. Do what? The expansion? The foundation? I'll help. Chidi's face lit up, but she raised a hand. On one condition. It stays about them, not us. He nodded. Agreed. Ngozi smiled. Then let's make grace contagious. Over the next month, their plan unfolded. Training centers opened in 3 neighborhoods, each painted in the same pastel pink, each bearing a small plaque, Hands of Grace, a second beginning. Women lined up daily clutching applications, their faces carrying both fear and fragile hope. Ngozi led the workshops herself, teaching not just hairdressing, but business budgeting and resilience. Chidi handled logistics quietly in the background, refusing interviews. He preferred watching from the sidelines as lives began to shift. Soon stories emerged, widows starting small salons, single mothers sending children back to school. Local news stations called Ngozi the heart of Lagos. For the first time in her life, she smiled at a headline without flinching. But the higher they rose, the more the city watched, and not everyone watching wished them well. One afternoon, as Ngozi finished a class, a woman approached her nervously. Madam, please, I think someone's been asking questions about you. At the center near Ikeja, Ngozi frowned. Questions, yes. About your past. About the accident. Her blood ran cold. What accident? The woman hesitated. They said your husband's death wasn't accidental. Ngozi froze. That's not true. I know, Ma, the woman said quickly, but they're saying it again. That night, Ngozi sat alone in the salon, the hum of distant traffic filling the silence. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through old photos. Roger, smiling at their wedding. Amara as a baby in his arms. Tears welled as she whispered, why can't the past just stay buried? The door opened quietly. Chidi stepped in, concern written all over his face. You didn't answer my calls. She looked up, eyes red. They're spreading lies again. About Roger's death. About me. He knelt beside her chair. Let them talk. Truth doesn't lose its value because liars inflate their noise. Her voice trembled. But I can't let Amara grow up with my shame. He reached up, gently lifting her chin. You don't have shame, Ngozi. You have scars. Scars mean you fought. She closed her eyes, the tears spilling freely. Every time I build something good, the world tries to break it. He smiled softly. Then we'll just keep rebuilding until it gets tired. Her laugh cracked through her tears. You make it sound so easy. It isn't, he said, brushing away a tear with his thumb. But we'll do it together. Ngozi opened her eyes and met his steady, unwavering, full of quiet fire. Together, yes, he whispered. For as long as Grace lets me. She took a shaky breath. Then maybe Grace is stronger than gossip after all. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance again, not a storm. This time, just the earth's applause. And as Chidi wrapped his arms around her, holding her through the echoes of fear and faith, Ngozi realized that the world could keep speaking its falsehoods. She finally knew the truth of her own story. Grace didn't mean the absence of storms. It meant finding someone who'd stand with you until the rain stopped. Morning rose over Lagos like a slow confession, gray at first, then gold creeping through the haze. Hands of Grace opened earlier than usual that day. Ngozi unlocked the door herself, her heart oddly heavy despite the steady hum of success. The little bell over the entrance chimed as sunlight spilled across the mirrors. She'd grown used to that sound. It meant another beginning, another woman walking in with nothing but hope. But today the echo felt hollow. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the brushes. The rumors about Roger's accident had spread faster than she imagined. Some clients avoided her whispering when they thought she couldn't hear. Others offered forced sympathy, which was somehow worse. Amara sensed it too. The girl had stopped humming when she played. Her laughter came less easily. Last night she'd asked Mom, "Did Dad really die because of you?" The question had ripped through Ngozi's chest like glass. She hadn't answered. How could she explain to a child that grief was cruel, that sometimes even truth sounded like guilt? When Chidi arrived mid-morning, he immediately noticed the tension in her eyes. "You haven't eaten," he said softly, placing a bag of akara and pap on the counter. "I'm not hungry," she replied, still wiping the mirrors that were already clean. He didn't push. He just stood beside her, his reflection merging with hers in the glass. "Do you want to tell me what's happening?" She hesitated, her throat tightening. "They're saying Roger's death wasn't an accident, that he owed money to people that I wanted him gone." Chidi's jaw clenched. "And you believe people who've never met you know the truth better than you do?" "I believe pain always finds me, no matter how far I run." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "Don't. Every time you get close, the world finds a way to use me against you." He studied her quietly, his voice calm but firm. "Ngozi, every scar they throw at you is proof you've lived honestly. You can't keep hiding from your own story." She turned to him, eyes brimming. "And what about you, Chidi? When your name was dragged through the mud, didn't you hide?" He smiled faintly. "At first, yes. But then a barefoot little girl walked into my life and reminded me courage can come wrapped in hunger." Her tears broke free then. He didn't move closer. He didn't need to. The silence between them did the talking. Later that afternoon, Inspector Musa arrived unannounced, his notebook tucked under his arm. "Madam Ngozi," he greeted, "I need a word." Ngozi stiffened. "Is this about the rumors?" partly Musa said. "We reopened your husband's file after seeing his name resurface online. Something caught our attention." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "The driver who hit him never faced trial. He fled the scene, but we recently found a witness who saw another car following your husband that night, one belonging to a Mr. Tunde Ajayi." Ngozi froze. "Tunde, that's impossible," maybe Musa said. "But it explains why he knew so much about you, why he targeted you both. He may have been involved in your husband's death, or at least tried to exploit it." Her knees buckled. Chidi caught her before she fell. "This can't be real," she whispered. "He ruined our lives twice." Musa nodded grimly. "We'll confirm it soon. But you need to be prepared when justice comes late. It doesn't come quietly." That night, Chidi drove her and Amara home. The rain had returned, soft but unrelenting. Ngozi stared out the window, her thoughts unraveling like old thread. "If this is true," she murmured, "then Roger didn't just die, he was taken." Chidi gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Then we'll make sure the truth doesn't stay buried again." Amara slept in the back seat, her small face calm despite the storm outside. Ngozi looked back at her and whispered, "How do I tell her?" Chidi's voice was low. "The same way you taught her to face every storm with truth." When they reached her apartment, he walked her to the door. "You're not alone in this, Ngozi." She turned to face him. "You say that so easily." "Because I mean it." She wanted to believe him. But belief had always been her most fragile muscle. Days passed, each one stretching thinner than the last. The CID confirmed that Tunde's car had indeed been near the accident scene. His phone records revealed multiple calls to an unknown number that night, possibly a partner in whatever scheme he'd been running. When the news broke, Lagos erupted with outrage. "The man who mocked kindness is now a suspect in manslaughter," blared the headlines. The story that once painted Ngozi as a manipulative widow now turned her into a symbol of unjust suffering. But she didn't celebrate. She just sat in the salon one evening, staring at Roger's photo on her phone. "You see love," she whispered. The truth finally walked home. Chidi found her there hours later. "They'll arrest him tomorrow," he said quietly. She looked up, eyes tired but dry. "Justice feels heavier than guilt, doesn't it?" He sat beside her. "Because guilt fades when you accept it. Justice lingers, it asks what you'll do next." She nodded slowly. Then I want to do something. The next morning, Ngozi went live on Hands of Grace's social page. Her followers, tens of thousands, now watched as she stood before the mirror that had seen her through shame, triumph, and everything between. I've been many things to many people, she began, her voice steady. A widow, a victim, a liar. But today, I'm just a woman telling her truth. My husband's death was not an accident. The man who caused it tried to destroy what I built, but grace kept me standing. She paused, inhaling deeply. If you've ever been broken, know this kindness isn't weakness. It's defiance. It's saying, you won't make me cruel, no matter what you take from me. The video ended with silence, but that silence roared across Lagos. Within hours, Hands of Grace trended again, this time not for scandal but for strength. That evening, the city seemed to hum differently. Cars slowed near the salon, people waved as they passed. Inside, Amara drew another picture, a woman with a halo of light around her head. Who's that? Chidi asked. My mom, she said proudly. She's brave now. Chidi smiled. She's always been brave. Ngozi entered just in time to hear that. You're filling her head with lies again. Not lies, he said, rising. Legacy. She rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide the blush creeping up her neck. You're impossible, Chidi. I prefer unstoppable. They laughed, and for once the laughter didn't carry any shadow. A week later, the court announced Tunde's formal charges: vehicular homicide, blackmail, and fraud. He'd spend years behind bars, though no sentence could undo the scars he left. That night, Chidi invited Ngozi and Amara to his home for dinner, a modest gathering with Ada and a few close friends. The air smelled of jollof rice and roasted fish. During dessert, Ada raised her glass. To truth, she said. Chidi lifted his. And to grace, which makes truth bearable. Ngozi smiled, her eyes shining. And to second chances. They clinked glasses. Amara giggled and raised her cup of juice. And to family, everyone laughed, but for Chidi, the word family lingered. Later, after everyone left, he and Ngozi stood by the balcony overlooking the shimmering city. You ever wonder why we met? She asked softly. He nodded. Every day. And your answer? He turned to her eyes gentle. Because life was waiting for me to stop surviving and start living. She smiled, stepping closer. Then maybe we both found our reasons. The wind tugged at her hair, and for a heartbeat, the world felt still. He brushed a curl from her cheek, his fingers lingering. Ngozi, he said quietly, whatever tomorrow brings, don't run from it. Not anymore. I'm tired of running, she whispered. Good, he murmured, because I'd like to walk beside you for a long time. Her breath caught. She didn't answer, she didn't need to. The city lights flickered like blessings below them, and in that quiet, unhurried moment, they understood that love didn't need declarations. It just needed truth and the courage to keep choosing it, no matter how many storms came. Down in the city streets, Hands of Grace glowed faintly in the distance, its sign flickering like a promise. The world had changed, yes, but more importantly they had. For the first time since tragedy tore through her life, Ngozi finally exhaled without fear. The rain had stopped long ago, yet she could still hear it in her memory, steady, relentless cleansing. And in that rhythm she realized grace hadn't just found her. It had remade her. Lagos woke in soft gold that morning, the sky washed clean after a night of light rain. From the second-floor balcony of Hands of Grace, Ngozi watched the street below come alive, hawkers calling out their prices, school children chasing each other through puddles, a preacher's voice rising over the hum of traffic. It was noisy, chaotic, and perfect. For the first time in years, the noise didn't make her flinch. It made her feel alive. Inside the salon buzzed with laughter. The morning class was already full. 10 women learning how to braid, cut, and twist hair while talking about rent, heartbreak, and dreams. The mirrors caught their reflections, women who had once been invisible now, glowing with confidence. Ngozi moved among them with calm authority, fixing a braid here, correcting a grip there. You're doing better, Rose, she said to a shy woman who'd lost her husband in the same hospital where Roger had died. Your fingers remember faster than your fear. Rose smiled, eyes wet. You always know the right words, madam, Ngozi chuckled. I just know the wrong pain. Behind her, the door opened. Amara ran in her school bag, bouncing face lit with joy. Mom, guess what? I won the writing contest. Ngozi spun around. You did, yes. They said my story made some teachers cry. Oh, Ngozi teased. What did you write about? Amara grinned. About a woman who fought storms and still learned to smile. The class burst into laughter and applause. Ngozi knelt and hugged her daughter tight, heart swelling until it hurt. You're your father's child, she whispered, and maybe a little bit mine too. That afternoon, Chidi arrived carrying a box of printed certificates. Graduation day for our first batch, he announced. Ngozi wiped her hands on a towel. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, he said. These women earned it. They've rebuilt their lives, and they deserve to see it in writing. He placed the box on the counter, his eyes softening as he looked around. The place had transformed. New posters lined the walls. Grace is power. Courage is beautiful. Even the air smelled like progress, shea butter, and hope. You've built something real here, he said quietly. Something that doesn't depend on me or anyone else. Ngozi looked up from the certificates. You sound like you're saying goodbye. Chidi hesitated. Not goodbye, just maybe stepping back a little. Her chest tightened. Why? Because I want people to see you, not the man who helped you. They need to know this is your story. She shook her head, frowning. You've been here since the beginning. You can't just disappear because of what people might think. He smiled sadly. It's not about them anymore. It's about legacy. I've spent years building things out of concrete and code, but you, he gestured at the women laughing nearby, you build people, and they don't need me in the picture for that to continue. Ngozi stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. You really think you can just walk away? He met her gaze gently. I'm not walking away, Ngozi. I'm walking beside you, but quietly this time. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence between them was thick, full of unspoken things neither dared to name. That evening, the graduation ceremony filled the courtyard with music and joy. Women in bright wrappers and headscarves danced barefoot on the concrete, while neighbors clapped from the street. A small banner fluttered overhead, Hands of Grace, First Class of Hope. Ngozi stood on the makeshift stage, her dress simple but radiant. When this began, she told the crowd, I thought I was building a salon. I didn't know I was building a home. Applause thundered. She continued, her voice steady but emotional. Grace doesn't mean life will be easy. It means even when the world throws storms, you learn to dance in the rain. And when kindness is mocked, you give more of it. Because that's how you win. Chidi stood at the back watching her with quiet pride. The woman who once trembled in supermarket humiliation now commanded hundreds with a single breath. When the ceremony ended, music flared again, highlife tunes floating over laughter. Chidi slipped through the crowd to where Ngozi stood with Amara. You were incredible, he said softly. Ngozi smiled, her eyes shining. We all were. You know, he added, I think Roger would have been proud. She nodded slowly, the mention of her late husband no longer a knife, just a soft ache. I think so too. For a while they said nothing, just listening to the city breathe around them. Later that night, after everyone left, Chidi helped stack chairs while Amara chased fireflies near the fence. The salon glowed under the moonlight, the sign Hands of Grace flickering softly like a heartbeat. You ever think about what's next? Ngozi asked suddenly. He wiped sweat from his forehead. You mean after this? Yes. After all the rebuilding, after all the healing. He looked at her thoughtfully. I think next is just another word for now. What we do today becomes tomorrow before we even notice. She smiled faintly. That's the kind of answer only you would give. Then maybe that's why you keep me around. She laughed, shaking her head. You're impossible. He stepped closer. Still always. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between them, the warm air, the hum of night, the soft sounds of Amara's laughter nearby. Chidi reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Ngozi froze. What's that? Something that's been burning a hole in my jacket for weeks. He opened it. Inside, a simple gold ring glinted under the moonlight. I know life's already given you a lifetime of storms, he said, voice low but steady. I can't promise there won't be more, but I can promise you won't face them alone again. Tears filled her eyes before she could speak. Chidi, are you sure? He smiled. I've never been sure of anything else. From behind them, Amara gasped. Mom, say yes. Please. Ngozi laughed through her tears. This child will never let me have a dramatic moment. She looked back at Chidi, her voice trembling but strong. Yes. The word fell like sunlight breaking through clouds. Chidi slipped the ring onto her finger, and for the first time in years, the weight she carried didn't feel heavy, it felt holy. Their wedding wasn't grand. It took place 3 weeks later at a small church near the sea. There were no cameras, no expensive decorations, just laughter dancing and the smell of jollof rice filling the air. The women from Hands of Grace sang a hymn they'd written themselves, their voices weaving through the salty breeze. Out of rain we rise, out of pain we build. Hands of Grace, hearts of light never broken, always healed. As they exchanged vows, Chidi whispered, "You're my second chance." Ngozi smiled, "And you're my peace after the war." When they stepped outside, the congregation threw petals and Amara ran forward, clutching both their hands. "Now we're all Okafors," she shouted proudly. Laughter erupted. Even the sea seemed to join in its waves, clapping against the shore like applause. Months later, Hands of Grace Foundation grew beyond Lagos. Branches opened in Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Accra. Women trained, worked, and changed their family stories. Ngozi became a voice for resilience, her speeches broadcast on radio stations across West Africa. Yet she never stopped braiding hair herself. "So I don't forget where I started," she'd tell anyone who asked. Chidi split his time between the foundation and his company, using both to hire from their graduates. Together they proved that kindness could be infrastructure, that empathy could be strategy. At night when the city lights glittered below their home, Ngozi often stood by the window remembering everything, the humiliation, the hunger, the heartbreak. It all seemed like another lifetime. One evening she asked softly, "Do you ever wonder why it had to be so hard?" Chidi wrapped his arms around her. "Because grace doesn't bloom in comfort," he said. "It needs rain." She smiled, leaning into him. "Then maybe we were always meant to meet in a storm." He kissed her forehead, "and build sunshine after." Outside, Lagos kept moving, wild, loud, alive, but inside their small home, peace reigned like a quiet hymn. And somewhere across the city, the neon sign of Hands of Grace flickered under the night sky, steady as a heartbeat, whispering the truth that had carried them through every trial. Kindness may stumble, but it never falls. Grace may bend, but it never breaks.